Remember me at all?
No.
Okay. So can I ask a quick synopsis of what you think the prescription is for society today for men? In a short version, what do you think they should do to be successful with women?
To be successful with women,
Yeah.
okay, are we talking about like getting a girl for a long-term relationship, just to get laid? What are we talking about?
Well, I think the only reason should be for a long-term relationship and marriage. I mean, that's Jesus Christ founded it, but I'm just curious what your prescription is.
Well,
Okay, so right there, right from the rip, we already have the witness. This is the witnessing, okay?
I've talked about this. I think guys have to have certain things in place, right, before they want to get into a long-term relationship. It's 5 things. So I would say 100K per year, 6 figures a year, 6 months to 1 year of savings, be in good shape, have at least 50 partners, right, sexual body count.
All these chicks lose their shit. It's like 90% of those chicks losing their shit have over 50 body count.
All right, and then is that the last one?
And then there's one more, but that's fine. You could go ahead and
Okay.
engage with what I've said so far.
So I've watched almost every.
See, so what he's trying to do is he's trying to get him to say what he already knows he's going to say. Yep. Right? He already knows this. He just wants it to be said publicly so everybody can go, "Oh my gosh, 50!" Really? So anyways, he's doing this because he's trying. This is the setup, right? So you told me that this is what we ought to do, right? Now you guys got to understand one of the reasons why I don't do advice, or I try to avoid it as much as possible. Like if people hit me up for a one-on-one thing, or if they want me to do counseling with them, or if they want something like that, the first thing you'll see when I send you my I have an email that I like response for something like this. If people want some sort of consultation, like a one-on-one consultation with me, in my policy email that I send you back, because I have to have you agree to this before I go and do anything, because it's to cover my ass and it's to cover your ass, right? So what I always say is like, I say from the jump, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a clinical psychologist, I'm not going to cure your autism, any of this stuff. But what I do say is this, is that I'm an analyst. So I will observe and check out what your situation is, and I will tell you what I think is going on. I'm going to analyze your situation, and I'm going to tell you what from my perspective, from my third party perspective, what I think is going on. And if that's valuable to you, then hell, we're in business, right? I never try to say, here's what you ought to do. Because 9 times out of 10, guys who hit me up, they already know what they're going to do. Like they know what they should do. They just want me to give them permission to do it. Rolo said I could do it. Like, I just told you what I saw going on, right? And so when people come to me, and this is very important because I got to start off this whole thing. One of the reasons why I'm very specific about not wanting to be a quote unquote, I guess I am, but not wanting anyways to be an influencer or somebody giving advice. I don't want to be like that chick who's like, talking about, oh man, you get in touch with their emotions. I don't advocate best practices. So if you look at any of even my religion book, all the way up to even the Player's Handbook, the Player's Handbook is not a how-to book. It's a why it works book. Again, mentioned first thing in the introduction. And the reason why I say that is because the red pill is not one size fits all. The red pill is just a praxeology. It is just information. What you do with that information, how you interpret that information, is up to the individual. And as I've said before, and I always run the risk of doing this, but this is just part of the job, right? Is you can't tell people statistics, and you can't tell them data, and you can't just give them simple facts without telling them how to feel about it. And that's exactly what this guy is doing right here. He's telling everybody how they ought to feel about what Myron talks about on the show. Now, Myron usually, like when he's referring to the book, Why Women Deserve Less, right? But one of the reasons I think Myron, and I would tell Myron this too, like if he watches this, I hope he does. But one of the things is, if we're going to get back to red pill roots, if we're going to get back to basics, we need to talk about stats. We need to talk about facts. We need to talk about dynamics from an impersonal, indifferent perspective, rather than saying you ought to do this or imply that you ought to do this. Okay. And so when I approach the red pill, it's from a praxeological perspective. And people go, well, what about morality? What's good and what's wrong? Those are best practices. So what I do with the red pill, people just ask me, what's the secret to your 30-year, marriage, right? Is it because of, this, this, and this, and this, and this? And that's like, I've said this before. I will say it when I said this on Tim Pool. I attribute the success, at least in part, if not in greater part, I attribute the success of my marriage to my understanding of my nature, of my wife's nature, of the confluence between those two, men and women's nature, and understanding red pill concepts, and then applying them as they best fit me. So when people go, well, how do I have a great relationship with my wife like you do, Rolo? I go, I don't know. Is your wife like my wife? You're not the same as me. One size does not fit all. You have to take that information and that data and the stuff that you're being educated, you're being equipped. You have to take that and use it and create your own plan to make your life better. That's the beauty of all this, man. You get to do it on your fucking own, man. You don't I don't have a book called 12 Rules for Life. I don't have a step-by-step plan. And that's the problem, is these guys want that. And when it doesn't fucking work, they want to be able to come back and read you the goddamn riot act in front of all these kids at South Carolina University. So that's really what's going on here. The guy knew what he was going to say, knows what he's going to say before the words come out of his mouth.
Single podcast you ever did for about a year and a half. So much so that I bought into a lot of the things that you said. And for about 2 years, it led me astray and significantly damaged my personal life, including relationships.
How did it lead you astray?
Well, you told me to go sleep with a bunch of women and date multiple women at the same time, which I did. And it significantly damaged my life. And it wasn't until I actually turned around and started.
You notice how ambiguous, like how so? How did it damage your life? How? What did it do? Like, you look like you're pretty well adjusted right now. So how did it do that? There's never any specifics when it comes to stuff like that.
Listening to Jesus Christ that I was saved. Now I'm happily married. I have one child now with another one on the way, and I've never felt happier. But I felt.
Congratulations, that's good. That's really good.
Thank you. And I know you're not against that, but my concern is what you're saying to men leads them astray, because I'm a walking example of it. And I think you're significantly damaging people, and especially you're leading people away from morality. Women.
Okay, so damaging. How were you damaged? Like it's very unspecific. It's always very ambiguous. But see, here's the thing: is like, even if I question this, I sound like the asshole. If Myron questions this, he's the asshole. You know why? Because Jesus Christ. God card. God always wins. You can't argue against God. That's why, like, when people say, you need to go and talk to Jay, what's his name? Or you need to go and talk to Will Spencer. You need to go and talk to, I don't know, Tom Gore, whoever the fuck, right? And it's like, why? Because the debate is pointless. Well, God said this, so I'm right and you're wrong. Bye. That's all it comes down to. There's never, it doesn't matter what the conversation is. It doesn't matter what the data is. It doesn't matter what what your take is. It's basically opinion being thrown at each other. That's all it comes down to. But the thing is like, at the end of the show, like, well, God told me to do this, and this is the right way to do things. And so therefore, God card, you're wrong. I'm right. Bye. Look, you schooled Burlo. Yeah.
Women are not sex objects. Women are created in the image of God, and they are valuable. And they should be treated as such. Why should God give you one of his children if you don't even know how to treat them? So I think.
So a question for you. You said you got out there dating and meeting women and stuff like that. And then you said that it kind of hurt you.
Yeah.
How did it hurt you specifically? Did you like just start? What happened specifically?
Well, I started warring against my own flesh. It's like trying to fill an empty void. Mm-hmm. There's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man that can only be filled by God alone.
This is all Christianese right here. Okay. So this is like whatever pastor told him this. This is on repeat.
Anything else you try to fill with that's not going to satisfy it. Sure. And I tried to do it with sex.
Yeah. So would it be fair? How'd you meet your wife?
We actually had the #1 dating podcast in North and South Carolina called Who Hurt You Podcast.
Okay.
And I'm also
Oh my God.
also friends with Fresh. I know him very well. I texted him before I came here.
Yep.
And I know pretty much everyone on your crew. But I was a heavy follower, and you actually inspired me to start the podcast, and I realized what I was doing was wrong.
Well, it could have been that wrong, because you had the #1 fucking podcast in South Carolina, my friend. It couldn't have been that bad. Really? I had a God-shaped hole in my heart, and I had to fill it with sex, right? Well, did what he say work? Like you weren't getting sex, and then you were after you listened to like what Myron was saying. So was he wrong, or were you just applying it in a way that just simply wasn't working for you? Right. So the guy, hey, I listened to your stuff for a year and a half, and I went out and I had sex with multiple partners, and I had blah blah blah. Right. So it worked for you then. So it actually worked, right? So that's the thing is like, and Myron's going to bring this up here in just a second, which is your life significant? Has your life benefited from, like, I don't care if you think it's like, maybe you should have gone around, you should have come to the same place and via a different route. Is that what we're saying? Because you're still where you're at as a result of having listened to inspiring you to your Who Hurt You podcast, right? So there has to be some value to it.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say that when you went through that experience, you were able to identify characteristics that you probably found as unredeemable and you probably wouldn't want to commit to, right?
In what way?
Well, when you were seeing these women, right, you probably started seeing patterns in how they behave, how they speak or whatever. Maybe they're not qualified to be a wife. Because the thing is, right?
Well, I don't need that. I have the Bible for that. It tells me what to look for.
Yeah, but the thing is,
how was that working out for you before you started watching Fresh and Fit? Were you getting in? Were you putting yourself out there? What did the Bible give you the wisdom to say, hey, I need to go out to the clubs and find a chick? Hey, maybe I should change something about myself. Maybe maybe all the things that Myron was talking about that got you laid, that got you to the point where you could actually go out and have multiple girls and maybe select from amongst those multiple girls. Perhaps that was something that was lacking in the Bible. I don't know.
Is that you were able, and again, you're probably not going to notice it, but when you dated and dealt with all these women, you probably were able to identify characteristics that you were not fond of, or characteristics that would make a woman not a good candidate for a long-term relationship. And I think half the game is figuring out which girls don't qualify for marriage versus which ones that do. And clearly you learned a skill set on how to become attractive and get women, and then you're able to identify the things that you like versus the things that you don't like. And that only comes a lot of times with experience. Now, look, if a guy can go ahead and, find a woman as a virgin and be attractive and be able to understand how to navigate that, that's great in modern times. But the reality is a lot of guys don't. And I mean, even in your success story, you had to go through a lot of bad women to be able to identify your current wife as the one. So failures are good.
You don't have to go through things in order to understand that you shouldn't or you should do something.
Okay. What he's about to do is he's about to make the point that this is Christianese once again, but it's common philosophy, right? I don't have to drink poison to know that it's poisonous, right? You don't have to go through these experiences to know, to attain wisdom, right? Let me ask you something here. Would you rather, if let's say you were addicted to heroin, would you rather have your drug counselor be a guy who read a lot of books on it, has a degree in heroin counseling, or would you rather have a guy who has all the same knowledge, but also was a recovering addict himself and understands exactly what you're going through? That is empathetic, literally can feel what you're experiencing, has felt because he's felt it before. Who's a more effective drug counselor? A previous addict or the guy who just has a lot of book knowledge? I would argue strongly that the guy who has gone through it already is going to be a more effective counselor than a guy who has never experienced what it's like to be high on cocaine or high on fucking heroin or whatever else it is. So yes, there is a point to this. And it's usually, and I hate to say this because this is part of my religion too, right? So saying, the Bible is an infallible book, but okay, great. But the thing is would you rather have somebody who has no prior knowledge of marriage, of divorce, of having gone through an experience that maybe was a very negative experience? I would not wish my experience going through hell with my borderline personality disordered girlfriend. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. And I mean that. I wouldn't even wish that on Destiny. It was the pit of fucking misery. But I went through that and I understand that. So when people come to me and say, my girlfriend this, and she's got BPD, and I understand, and I can have a more meaningful conversation with somebody and help them out of that pit of hell because I was in that pit of hell myself. So yes, you do have to experience things. You have to go through stuff. One of the problems I have, like when I was when I was doing what you call it, my research for the fourth book or for religion, I can remember going to like church and listening to pastors on Valentine's Day, right? Or Mother's Day or Father's Day. Usually it's Valentine's Day. And that's when you get like the relationship sermons and you get the sex sermons and it's always guys do better, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I noticed is, especially from younger pastors, they would go up onto the stage or the podium, whatever, and they would always bring their wives with them. And the wife had to be like, right, they're co-pastoring, right? And at no other time would they do this, but that one Sunday, that's when they were doing it. And wifey is up there to just sort of nod her head and go, yeah, it's okay, ladies. He's saying what we want him to say, nodding along, saying it's all, so I approve, vaya con Dios. He's saying it's, it's kosher. No, I'm not Jewish. But then I began to realize, like, here I am, like, I think at the time I was in my 50s, right? So looking at this guy, and the guy looks like he's probably in his like mid 20s, maybe early 30s. I'm like, and then they proudly talk about how they met at church camp, and how they really wanted to get after it, but they couldn't because they weren't married, and so they would sneak around and all this other stuff. And I'm like, why would anybody be taking this guy's personal stories, his personal anecdotes, as something that should be like a basis for advice for marriage or for anything else for that matter? Like, well, it doesn't matter. We got the Bible. Okay, well, the end of discussion. Show me where in the Bible where it says, how do I find a quality woman? Where do I find her? Do I find her at a charity event? Do I find her at Bible study? Do I find her in the clubs? Because I'll tell you right now, that's where I met Mrs. Tomasi, right where they tell you you're not supposed to find a quality woman. Found her at a gig right as soon as I was done. Drinking beer. It's awesome. Loved it. Had no problem with it. That's not where you find a quality woman. Where do you find them? Oh, in church, at the Bible study at church. You mean like Hillary Crowder and Steven Crowder? So let's take everything with a grain of salt.
You don't have to go through it. Like, I don't have to jump off of a building to understand that that's going to end my life. I can use wisdom and say that looks like it's going to end my life because I've seen someone else do it and it ended their life. And so men, we don't have to sleep with multiple women and have all these like relationships in order to understand who we want as a wife, or vice versa.
You kind of do.
Aim for the bushes.
You kind of do. And I will tell you that, and I'll explain to you. One of the reasons I brought this up this is part of a clip I did at one point. One of the reasons I think that a lot of Christian guys have a real tough time with pornography, like what is it, 70% of married Christian men in general, and this was the last numbers I had, so this was like back from 2020, that 70% of Christian men who identify as Christian, have a pornography addiction or a problem or struggle, quote unquote, struggle with pornography. Why? Well, don't you have some insulation against that? Doesn't the Bible give you the wisdom to stay far, far away from that? I think one of the reasons why a lot of Christian men struggle, quote unquote, with pornography is because it shows them what they're missing. It shows them what they could be doing. It shows them what they could have had. That's the problem. Like, oh wow, chicks do that. Like I know so many guys who have like come out of really bad divorces, and their ex-wife takes up with maybe a younger guy or like, I don't know, a new guy, and she is doing and performing sexually in ways that she would never have considered having sex with him. Like, she's a doggy style, no problem. I'll do this. Like all the stuff that she would never do with that guy, she would just like by default wanted to do with this guy. That's why you have to have experience. That's why you have to understand female nature. And how do you do that? You have to experience it firsthand. Like, show me something in the Bible that's saying, here's women's nature and here's men's nature. No, what I see is, don't rely on your own wisdom. And I think that's the problem that a lot of these guys have, is it seems like relying on your own wisdom. And they have a real problem with that because it conflicts with what they believe in. It conflicts with their belief sets.
You don't have to do that.
Of socioeconomic or maybe even relationship failures could be good, but there's a difference with what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're warned against our soul. Jesus Christ commands us to marry one woman. That's it.
Sure.
Where is that? Where's that commandment?
Look for
Is
it.
that the 11th commandment? Commands us to have just where? Where is that? Somebody tell me about it. I'm not being a dick. I just genuinely want to know. You know, I think it's funny because there's a lot of like gosh, I need to find that chart. I've got a chart on biblical marriage and what biblical marriage looks like from the Old Testament right up to the New Testament. Right now, it could be one man, one woman. Then you look at like, I don't know, King David, kill your buddy and take his wife. You know, that's okay too, right? Or King Solomon or whatever. He's got 300 wives and 700 concubines. That's biblical marriage as well. There's a whole bunch of examples of biblical. I mean, even Father Abraham, he had like 2 wives and how many maidservants?
Yeah.
Well, that's the Old Testament, Rollo. That doesn't have any bearing right now. Jesus Christ commands us to have one wife, one man, one woman. Where in the, like, what? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Where?
Matthew's 5.
Where in the Bible is that? That's what I would like to know. Where's that commandment?
What you were causing me to do was sin against myself, and that's the point I'm trying to get to. It's immoral.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take personal responsibility, bro. Because here's the reality.
No, I do, 100%.
Yeah, so
very publicly, I have in front of over 40,000 people. I've done that.
Yeah, great. But the point I'm trying to make is, I teach guys a skill set, right? If I give you a gun and you shoot yourself in the foot, is that my fault? If I taught you how to properly use it, how to disarm it, disassemble it, you know, how to load the magazine in properly, all that. If I give you the skill set, then you shoot yourself in the foot, right? Is that really my fault? No, I just arm you with the skill set. Then you choose what you want to do with it. Now, obviously, you wanted to go toward a sex escapade, which is, I guess, fine. But the reality is, I armed you with the tools to become an attractive guy, and you utilize that. You can't come back and get mad.
No, you didn't arm me with that. I became attractive when I followed Jesus. That was it.
Oh, okay. Now it's changing the story.
No, I'm not changing any story. It's one thing.
Well, we know that's not true because he was just saying a little while ago that he had followed what he said, dated multiple women. So he had to have been attractive enough after listening to what Myron was saying to sin against himself. He had to have been attractive enough to get women to want to fuck him after Myron had said what he said. So we already know that you were attractive before you went full Jesus, right? You were already attractive. So you've already contradicted yourself on that.
Thing to be attractive in the sense of gaining sexual partners, but it's a completely different thing to be attractive to someone that wants to marry you and spend their life with you and have kids with you. Those are 2 completely different sexual attractions. If I walk in here looking like Thor, I'm...
Okay, so this is why most Christian marriages fail. I don't have to like there's a different set of criteria for arousal and attraction in marriage and out of marriage. Like there's 2 different sets of prerequisites for that, and the long and the short of this is absolutely not. So you got these guys who are like, well, I'm a Christian, so I don't have to worry about staying in shape anymore. I'm a Christian, so I don't have to worry about what I eat. I'm a Christian, so I don't have to worry because we're both on board with the Lord, and she's got to duty sex and have sex with me because that's what's in the Bible. Don't deny yourselves from each other.
Sounds like
6'2" and shredded. Obviously, I'm going to be attractive to women, but it doesn't mean that that's a relationship that produces value for me and my family.
Okay, what the fuck is value? What would be value? Nail those guys on this. What is value? That's a value. Like that's the most ambiguous bullshit term. It's like saying just be yourself, bro. What the fuck? What value? What is the value? Well, I could be ripped as Thor and everything, and chicks would be attracted to me, but then I wouldn't be able to start a relationship of value. Okay, explain to me the limitations you have looking like Chris Evans or fucking Chris Hemsworth that would not apply in marriage that would apply out of marriage that wouldn't apply in marriage. Do you think that your wife would be less appreciative of the fact that you look like Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth inside your marriage? Do you think she'd go, you know what, we're married now, you don't have to look like that anymore, babe, it's fine, yes, it's okay, dad bod's good thing, let's do that? Do you think that conversation would happen? No, it would. It's like, this is like Pollyanna, Sesame Street, preschool bullshit, man. And what kills me is this, is like guys like this stick their heads back in the sand. They've already seen the truth. He's experienced the truth. He's already been attractive. Is that what this is? Where did it say? Oh, sorry, Sam, that was that. Let me say, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, saying unto him, it is lawful for the man to put away his wife for every cause. And he answered, divorce. He answered and said unto them, have ye not read that which was made at the beginning, made them male and female? Yeah. And said, for this cause a man shall leave his father. Okay. And wherefore there are two, there becomes one flesh. Okay. So this is the commandment. They say unto him, why did Moses command to give a divorce? Okay, see, so, and I understand, and then the rest of this is like, there's no giving of marriage or marriage in heaven. I know that's the scriptural thing, because I've used that before, because I've used this scripture before, Sam, which is to prove that there is no such thing as a soulmate, right? Because once you're in heaven, there's no marriage in heaven. So how do you explain a soulmate, right? So are we to interpret this as a fact that this is like Jesus saying that we should only have one man and one wife, right? Because Moses had a lot of wives, quite a few actually. Why did Moses? Then I said, why did Moses then command to give a writ of divorcement and put her away? He said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, he suffered to you, put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. Okay. So from the beginning it was not so. No, it was one man, one wife. Okay. All right.